Warning, you are about to enter a 3D audio nightmare. This is a cinematic story for your ears, not your eyes. Visuals are for atmosphere only. For your own safety, put on your headphones. You have been warned.
The Mojave's midday sun hammered the research vehicle's hood like a brass gong. Marcus Chen squinted through the windshield, watching heat waves distort the horizon into a shimmering mirage. His fingers drummed against the steering wheel, a nervous tic he'd developed over 20 years of field work. Something felt wrong about this section of desert, though he couldn't quite place why. "You're doing it again," Sarah said from the passenger seat, not looking up from her tablet. Her voice carried that familiar mix of amusement and irritation. "The tapping!" Marcus forced his fingers still. "Sorry." He glanced in the rearview mirror at their second vehicle, following about 50 yards behind, Jake's military precise driving keeping perfect distance. "How's our GPS looking?" Sarah frowned, tapping the screen. "That's odd. Signal's getting spotty. We should have perfect coverage out here." She held the tablet up as if the extra foot of elevation might help. "These coordinates don't match our projected route." The vehicle's radio crackled. "Hey, boss?" Jake's voice came through with a burst of static. "You feeling these vibrations?" Marcus had been trying to ignore the subtle tremor in his seat for the past 10 minutes, writing it off as uneven terrain. But now that Jake mentioned it, "Yeah, probably just some minor seismic activity. Pretty common out here." "If you say so." Jake didn't sound convinced. "But I've never felt anything quite like this." The convoy rolled on through the endless sea of sand. Maya's voice came over the radio next, excitement clear even through the static. "Dr. Chen, you need to see this. There's some kind of bone formation emerging from that dune to the east." Marcus slowed the vehicle, scanning the indicated direction. About 200 yards out, bleached white shapes protruded from the sand like broken teeth. His trained eye recognized them immediately as ribs, massive ones, far larger than any known desert creature. "Let's check it out," he said, turning the wheel. The vehicle's tires crunched over scattered bones he hadn't noticed before, smaller fragments that seemed to be emerging from the sand in increasing numbers. They parked in a rough circle near the exposed ribs. As the team climbed out, the heat hit Marcus like a physical wall. He pulled his hat lower, shielding his eyes as he approached the formation. Dr. Hassan was already there, brush in hand, carefully clearing sand from the exposed bone. "This makes no sense," Amira muttered, running her fingers along the sun-bleached surface. "These aren't fossils. The bone structure suggests these are relatively recent, but the size..." She shook her head. Ben was setting up his equipment nearby, laying out sensors in a grid pattern. "Getting some weird readings here, boss. The ground density is all wrong for this region." Marcus knelt beside one of the ribs. It curved up from the sand like the hull of some ancient ship, easily 15 feet of exposed bone with more vanishing into the dune. The surface was scored with strange markings, not weather damage, but something else, almost like... The ground trembled, not the subtle vibration from before, but a distinct shudder that sent cascades of sand sliding down the dune's face. Everyone froze. "Did anyone else?" Maya started to ask. "Quiet," Jake snapped, his military training evident in his stance. He pressed one palm flat against the ground, eyes closed in concentration. For 30 long seconds, no one moved, no one spoke. The only sound was the hot desert wind whistling through the bone fragments scattered around them. Then the tremor came again, stronger this time. Equipment rattled in the vehicles. A seismometer Ben had just placed toppled over. "Back to the vehicles," Marcus ordered, keeping his voice calm despite the growing unease in his gut. "Now!" They moved quickly, professionally, just as they'd practiced for emergency situations. But as Marcus reached for his door handle, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. The scattered bones around the vehicles, the ones they'd driven over on their approach, they weren't scattered anymore. They formed a perfect circle around their position, as if something had arranged them while they were distracted by the larger formation. And in the sand between the bones, Marcus could have sworn he saw something moving beneath the surface, like a current running through golden water. "Everyone inside," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Don't move fast." The sun beat down, the wind died completely, and somewhere, deep below their feet, something vast and ancient shifted in its sleep. Sarah's hand found his arm, her fingers digging in. "Marcus," she breathed, "look at the dune." He turned. The massive rib cage they'd been examining was sinking, sand cascading around it as it disappeared into the desert floor. But it wasn't falling into a hole or collapse. It was being pulled under. The radio in Marcus's vehicle crackled with Jake's tense voice. "We need to move, now!" But Marcus's eyes were fixed on the sand between their vehicles. The surface rippled like water, grains cascading in impossible patterns. The scattered bones rattled against each other, producing a sound like macabre wind chimes. "Start the engines," he commanded, reaching for his own ignition. The key turned, but instead of the familiar rumble, there was only a hollow click. He tried again. Click, click, click. "Marcus?" Sarah's voice had taken on an edge he'd never heard before. "Why aren't we moving?" From the second vehicle, Ben was already out, hood up, his movements quick but controlled. "Both engines are dead. It's not the battery. Everything's just dead." The ground shuddered again, stronger this time. Maya stumbled, catching herself against the vehicle's door. "Something's coming up!" They watched in horror as a massive dome of sand rose between their vehicles, lifting them slightly off their wheels. The bones that had encircled them began to sink, disappearing one by one into the golden grains, like they were being pulled down by invisible hands. "The equipment!" Amira shouted, reaching for her precious samples, but Jake grabbed her arm. "Leave it! Everyone, on foot, now! Head for those rocks!" He pointed to a rocky outcropping about half a mile away, the only solid ground visible in any direction. They ran. The soft sand made every step a struggle, their feet sinking ankle-deep with each bound. Marcus could hear Sarah's labored breathing beside him, see Maya stumbling ahead, Ben helping her up. The sun beat down mercilessly, their shadows dancing crazily across the shifting surface. Behind them came a sound that didn't belong in nature, a low, resonant vibration that Marcus felt in his teeth and bones. It was like the deepest bass note ever struck, mixed with the sound of grinding stone. "Don't look back!" Jake shouted, but human nature won out. Marcus turned his head. The dune where their vehicles had been was collapsing in on itself, sand pouring into a massive depression like water down a drain. Their equipment, their samples, everything, gone. But that wasn't what made his heart stop. Rising from the center of the sinkhole was something that his mind refused to process. A segmented appendage covered with overlapping plates the color of sun-bleached bone burst from the sand. It was as thick as a redwood trunk, curving up into the harsh desert sky. The surface wasn't smooth. It was covered with what looked like sensory pits, each one contracting and expanding independently. "Marcus, run!" Sarah screamed. The appendage slammed down into the sand ahead of them, sending up a spray of golden grains that stung their faces. They veered left, struggling to maintain their footing as the ground beneath them began to slope inward. "Maya!" screamed Marcus, spun to see her sliding backward, the sand beneath her feet flowing like liquid toward the growing sinkhole. "Here!" Ben had wrapped a cable from his equipment belt around a protruding rock. He threw the other end to Jake, who caught it one-handed while still gripping Maya. The massive appendage withdrew into the sand, but the victory was short-lived. The ground began to vibrate with increasing intensity. Marcus felt it in his chest, a rhythmic pulsing that seemed to match his terrified heartbeat. "It's hurting us," Amira gasped, her scientific mind still analyzing even in the midst of terror. "Look!" She was right. Every time they tried to move toward the rocky outcropping, another appendage would burst from the sand, forcing them to change direction. They were being driven toward the center of a rapidly expanding bowl of sand. Sarah grabbed Marcus's arm. "The bones," she whispered. "All those bones we saw, they weren't scattered by time." "They were a warning," he finished, watching as more appendages began to rise around them, forming a fence of living bone and armored flesh. The grinding sound grew louder, and now there was something else mixed in, a high-pitched keening that made his ears ache. The team huddled together on their small island of relatively stable sand, watching in horror as their world contracted around them. The sinkhole was at least 50 feet deep now, with walls of flowing sand that would be impossible to climb. And then, from the depths of the pit, something began to emerge. Something vast, something ancient, something that had been waiting in the deep desert for prey exactly like them. The last thing Marcus saw before the sand gave way beneath their feet was a circular maw lined with rows of crystalline teeth, each one the size of a man. Then they were falling, and the desert swallowed them whole.
Darkness, the taste of sand, the sensation of falling, then sliding, then impact.
Marcus gasped as he hit solid ground, the air driven from his lungs. Complete darkness surrounded him, but he could hear the others groaning and coughing nearby. The air was thick with the smell of something ancient and organic, like opened crypts and dried leather. "Sound off!" Jake's military training took over. "Everyone report." "Here!" Sarah coughed, somewhere to Marcus's left. "Present!" Amira's voice shaking but alive. "I'm okay!" Maya called, followed by Ben's, "Still breathing!" Marcus fumbled for the emergency light attached to his belt, thanking whatever instinct had made him keep it on his person. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing their surroundings. They were in some kind of chamber, its walls composed of compacted sand and something else, a secreted substance that gleamed wetly in the light. The surface had a pattern to it, like the inside of a sea share, but grotesque, organic. The chamber was roughly circular, about 30 feet in diameter, with multiple tunnel openings leading off in different directions. "Nobody move," Marcus ordered, sweeping the light across the floor. It was littered with bones, not the sun-bleached specimens from above, but darker ones, stained by time and other things. Some were clearly human. Sarah pulled out her own light, adding its beam to his. "The walls," she whispered, "they're moving." She was right. The surface of the chamber pulsed slightly, like breathing tissue. The pattern in the walls shifted and flowed, and Marcus realized with horror that they were standing inside something alive. "It's a nest," Amira said, her scientific detachment barely masking her terror. "Or a stomach. These tunnels could be part of a digestive system." A deep vibration ran through the chamber, causing loose sand to rain down from above. The sound they'd heard on the surface was louder here, that impossible bass note that seemed to resonate with their own bones. "We need to move," Jake said, checking the tunnel openings. "That thing's still up there, and I'm betting these tunnels are how it gets around." "Move where?" Maya's voice cracked. "We don't know which way is out." Another tremor, stronger this time. One of the tunnels began to contract, its opening shrinking like a closing throat. "That one's out," Ben said grimly, pointing his light at another tunnel. "The airflow's stronger here, might lead to the surface." They had no choice. The chamber was beginning to contract around them, the walls pulsing more rapidly. They rushed into the tunnel Ben had indicated, trying not to think about how the floor seemed to ripple beneath their feet. The tunnel was a nightmare of texture and sound. Their lights revealed walls lined with the same organic patterns, but here they could see details they wished they hadn't. Hair-like sensory filaments that waved in some unfelt current, patches of crystalline growth that looked disturbingly like the teeth they'd glimpsed above. "The walls," Maya whimpered, "they're tasting us." She was right. The filaments reached out as they passed, brushing against them with horrible delicacy. Each contact left a burning sensation, even through their clothes. The tunnel began to slope upward, giving them hope, but then split into 3 branches. Before they could decide which way to go, that earth-shaking vibration returned. But this time, it was behind them. Marcus turned, lifting his light. The beam illuminated something that made his mind recoil. A mass of writhing appendages, smaller versions of what they'd seen above, filling the tunnel like some impossible combination of centipede and hand. "Run!" They sprinted down the rightmost tunnel, no longer caring for direction. The sound of their pursuer filled the space, a wet, sliding noise mixed with the click of countless armored segments. The tunnel floor began to undulate, trying to trip them, slow them, push them back towards the horror behind. Sarah stumbled. Marcus caught her arm, yanking her forward just as one of the appendages snapped through the space where she had been. The thing was learning, adapting its tunnels to separate them, wear them down. The tunnel opened into another chamber, this one larger than the first. Their lights revealed more tunnel openings high in the walls, and piles of bones arranged in concentric circles around a central depression with a liquid that moved with apparent intelligence. They were trapped. The appendages filled the tunnel behind them, and now the chamber's multiple openings began to pulse with movement. The liquid in the central pit started to rise, forming shapes that reached for them with horrible purpose. "The walls!" Ben shouted, pointing upward. "There's a crack, natural rock, not this thing." Their lights found it, a fissure in the organic ceiling where natural stone showed through. Hope surged, then died as they realized it was at least 20 feet up the curved wall. The grinding sound returned, and through every tunnel opening, They could see more appendages approaching. The thing had them surrounded, in its own digestive system, in its own time. Amira screamed as one of the liquid tentacles from the pit wrapped around her ankle. Jake slashed it with his knife, releasing a spray of phosphorescent fluid that hissed and smoked where it hit the ground. The whole chamber contracted, pushing them towards the pit. The walls rippled with increasing speed, and that deep resonant note became a roar that threatened to shake them apart. Marcus looked at the fissure above, then at his team, and made a decision that would either save them all or doom them all. "The bones!" he shouted over the organic cacophony. "Stack them, now!" They had seconds to act before the chamber finished its deadly compression. As the walls pulsed and the appendages reached and the liquid horrors rose, they began to build their macabre ladder toward the only real earth they could see. But they all knew the truth. Even if they reached it, something was waiting up there. Something ancient, something patient, something that had been perfecting this hunt since before humans walked the earth. The chamber contracted again, and their grisly tower began to sway. The bone tower swayed precariously as Marcus helped Sarah onto the next level. The structure was a nightmare of engineering. Femurs locked with rib cages, pelvic bones wedged against skulls. Every piece they touched told a story of previous victims, their final moments preserved in this underground charnel house. "Hurry!" Jake called from below, his knife slashing at another liquid tentacle that reached for them. The phosphorescent blood splattered across his chest, eating small holes in his shirt. The chamber's contractions were becoming more rhythmic now, like a massive heart beating around them. Each pulse sent vibrations through their makeshift tower, threatening to send them tumbling into the luminescent pit below. Maya screamed. Marcus looked down to see one of the wall tentacles had wrapped around her waist, trying to pull her into the organic surface. Amira and Ben grabbed her arms, playing tug-of-war with the pulsing appendage. "The knife!" Sarah yelled, sliding down their construct despite Marcus's attempt to stop her. She took Jake's blade and slashed at the tentacle's base where it emerged from the wall. The appendage released Maya, but immediately whipped towards Sarah, catching her across the face. She stumbled backward, blood streaming from a deep cut on her cheek. The tentacle had left something behind, a residue that began to smoke against her skin. "It's secreting digestive enzymes," Amira said, her scientific mind still processing, even as she helped Sarah back to the tower. "It's starting the breakdown process while we're still alive." A deep rumble shook the chamber, different from the pulses. Chunks of their bone tower began to shift and slide. "It's changing the chamber structure," Ben shouted, pointing to where the walls were beginning to tilt inward. "It's going to collapse the whole space." Marcus reached the fissure, his fingers finding purchase in real stone for the first time since their fall. The opening was narrow, barely wide enough to squeeze through, but he could feel fresh air. "One at a time," he called down. "Sarah, you first." She was halfway up when the tower shifted violently. One of the support bones, a massive femur that might have belonged to a mammoth, cracked with a sound like a gunshot. The whole structure listed sideways. Maya lost her grip and fell, but Jake caught her arm, his muscles straining as he held both her weight and his own position. Above them, Sarah had reached Marcus and was squeezing through the fissure. The chamber's floor was nearly vertical now, the luminescent pit becoming a waterfall of living liquid that flowed up the walls in defiance of gravity. The bone tower groaned. "Ben, Amira, move!" Jake commanded, his voice strained as he pulled Maya back to a stable position. They scrambled upward as the chamber continued its impossible transformation. The walls were no longer walls at all, but shifting, flowing surfaces that reached for them with countless appendages. A deep, resonant sound filled the space, not the mechanical grinding from before, but something almost like speech. The vibrations matched the patterns of the reaching tentacles, the flow of the luminescent liquid, the pulses of the chamber itself. "It's coordinating," Amira gasped as she reached Marcus. "All of this, it's all one organism communicating with itself." The bone tower collapsed. Jake and Maya, still near the bottom, leapt for the wall as their support crumbled. They caught a protruding ridge of crystalline growth, but the surface began to soften under their grip. "Hold on!" Marcus lay flat, reaching down toward them. Ben and Amira anchored his legs as Sarah, now safely in the fissure, shone her light down to guide them. The chamber's transformation accelerated. The tunnels were now sealed, replaced by rippling waves of tissue that flowed like living quicksand.
The phosphorescent liquid had reached the ceiling, forming impossible geometric patterns that hurt the eyes to look at. Jake managed to push Maya up toward Marcus's outstretched hand. Their fingers touched, caught, and then the crystalline ridge supporting Jake dissolved completely. "No!" Maya screamed as Jake fell. He hit the flowing wall and began to sink into it, the living tissue engulfing him like quicksand. His face contorted in pain as the digestive enzymes began their work. "The cable!" Ben shouted, already unspooling the cord from his belt. "Jake, catch!" The cable snaked down through the chaos. Jake's hand shot up, caught it, but the cord began to dissolve where it touched the living wall. Marcus watched in horror as the fibers unraveled. They had seconds at most. "Paul!" he commanded, and everyone grabbed the cable. Jake's face was a mask of agony as the digestive processes reached his legs, but his grip was iron. The cable snapped, but Jake was ready. The moment he felt the cord giving way, he pushed off the wall with everything he had, launching himself upward just enough for Marcus and Ben to catch his arms. They dragged him up into the fissure as the chamber completed its transformation below. Where there had been a room, there was now a writhing pit of organic horror, filled with flowing liquid and reaching appendages. And above them, through the stone tunnel, they could feel the vibrations of something massive moving across the desert surface, hunting, waiting. They huddled in the narrow stone passage, Jake's skin smoking where the digestive enzymes had touched him, Sarah's face still bleeding from the tentacle's cut, all of them coated in phosphorescent residue that was slowly eating through their clothes. "What do we do now?" Maya whispered. Before anyone could answer, the stone around them began to crack. The creature had found them, and this time there would be nowhere left to run.
The stone fissure exploded inward. Crystalline teeth the size of railroad spikes punched through the rock, sending fragments of limestone raining down on the huddled group. Natural stone gave way to that same organic, pulsing tissue they'd seen below. "Move!" Marcus shoved the others deeper into the tunnel as massive appendages began to tear through the ceiling. Their emergency lights illuminated a nightmare in progress, the transformation of natural rock into living tissue, spreading like a cancer through the stone. They scrambled through the narrowing passage, Jake gritting his teeth against the pain of his partially digested legs. The tunnel angled upward sharply, forcing them to climb more than crawl. "Wait," Amira gasped, pressing her hand against a section of wall that hadn't yet transformed. "Feel this!" Despite the chaos around them, Marcus forced himself to stop. Under his palm, he could feel regular vibrations pulsing through the stone, but not from the creature's movement. These were different. "Seismic waves," Ben said, his eyes widening. "Regular ones. That's a generator." "There must be a mining operation nearby," Sarah added, wiping blood from her cheek. "If we can reach it." The decision was made for them as the tunnel behind collapsed, the organic growth consuming the last of their escape route. They pushed forward, following the vibrations, trying to ignore the sounds of pursuit echoing through the stone. The tunnel widened into a small natural cave. Fragments of old mining equipment lay scattered about, ancient wooden supports, rusted metal tracks, the skeletal remains of what might have been a cart. "Look at the bones," Amira said, shining her light on a cluster of remains. "These aren't like the others, they're fossilized." She was right. Unlike the recent kills they'd seen below, these bones were mineralized, turned to stone over millions of years, and they were arranged in a pattern, not scattered, but carefully placed. "It's a nest," Maya whispered, "an ancient one." The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. "This thing, it's been here since the Pleistocene, maybe longer. These aren't just hunting grounds, this is its territory, its home." A deep vibration shook the cave, different from the generator's pulse. The creature was close now, but for the first time, they could feel something new in its movements, something almost like hesitation. It's never had prey reach this place before, Sarah realized. We're the first. The cave wall burst inward, but instead of appendages or teeth, they found themselves facing something far worse, a massive sensory organ, like an eye but wrong in ways that defied description. The surface was covered in crystalline structures that reflected their lights in fractalized patterns, and at its center was a pupil-like structure that moved with horrible intelligence. They could feel it studying them, analyzing them, the air filled with that deep, resonant sound they'd heard before, but now it had harmonics, layers of complexity that made their teeth ache and their vision blur. "It's not just hunting us," Amira breathed,
her scientific detachment cracking. It's learning from us. The eye's surface began to ripple, and from it emerged something that made them all step back in horror. It was forming shapes, human shapes, crude approximations of arms, legs, faces. The creature was trying to mimic us. The generator, Jake grunted through his pain. The vibrations must be interfering with its sensory system. That's why it never came here before. Marcus's mind raced, and why it's having trouble maintaining its usual form. The frequencies are disrupting its control over its own tissue. The eye withdrew suddenly, leaving a hole in the cave wall. Beyond it, they could see a maze of tunnels, some natural, some clearly formed by the creature. And in the distance, growing louder, was the steady thrum of industrial machinery. If we can reach the generator, Ben said, checking his dissolving equipment belt, maybe we can... He never finished the sentence. The cave floor beneath them suddenly transformed, becoming that same living tissue they'd seen below. But this time, instead of trying to digest them, it began to form into shapes, horrible, twisted approximations of human bodies rising from the ground like clay sculptures made by a mad god. The creature wasn't just mimicking them anymore, it was trying to become them. Maya screamed as one of the pseudo-human forms reached for her with malformed hands. Jake swung at it with his knife, but the blade passed through the semi-liquid tissue without effect. The thing's face, a nightmare parody of human features, opened in a silent scream. "The generator!" Marcus shouted. "Run!" They fled through the hole left by the eye's withdrawal, pursued now not just by the creature's usual appendages, but dozens of these twisted human simulacra. Each one moved wrongly, like puppets with too many joints, their faces constantly shifting as the creature tried to perfect its horrific mimicry. Behind them, that deep resonant sound rose to a roar, but now they could hear something else in it, something almost like...
The mining tunnel stretched before them, ancient support beams groaning under the weight of shifting earth. The generator's vibrations grew stronger, a mechanical heartbeat guiding them through the darkness. Behind them, the sound of malformed footsteps echoed, dozens of not quite human things learning to walk with each passing second. "Left!" Ben shouted, recognizing the industrial power cables running along the ceiling. "The generator has to be..." The tunnel ahead collapsed, not from natural causes, but from massive crystalline spikes punching through the walls. The creature was cutting off their escape, using the knowledge it had gained from studying the mine's structure. "Back!" Marcus turned, but stopped cold. The pseudo-human forms had caught up, their bodies more refined now. The first wave moved like broken marionettes, but the newer ones, their movements were smoother, more practiced. Their faces had begun to capture genuine human expressions, particularly those of terror and pain. "It's learning from our fear," Amira said, her voice shaking, "using our own responses to perfect its mimicry." Sarah pointed to a maintenance shaft. "Through here! The cables lead this way!" They squeezed into the narrow passage just as one of the creature's original appendages smashed through the main tunnel wall, pulverizing the spot where they'd stood. Jake went last, suppressing a cry of pain as his injured legs scraped against the rough stone. The shaft was claustrophobic, barely wide enough for them to crawl single file. Their lights illuminated thick power cables running alongside them, humming with electricity. The generator's pulse was stronger here, making their teeth chatter and their vision vibrate. Maya, in the lead, suddenly stopped. "Oh God," Marcus called up. "What is it? It's waiting for us." The shaft opened into a large chamber that must have once been the mine's main generator room. Ancient machinery lined the walls, but at the center sat a modern industrial generator, its massive form thrumming with power. The cables they'd followed fed into it like arteries into a heart. But they weren't alone. Pressed against the walls, emerging from them, were dozens of the creature's human approximations. These ones were nearly perfect, only their too smooth skin and slightly wrong proportions gave them away. They stood motionless, watching, learning, and on the ceiling... "Don't look up," Sarah whispered, but they all did. The creature had formed something new, a massive face, 50 feet across, studied them from above. But it wasn't the twisted attempts at humanity from before. This face combined human features with the creature's original form. Crystalline teeth arranged in concentric circles, sensory pits that pulsed with bioluminescence, and eyes, hundreds of eyes, each one reflecting their own terrified expressions back at them. The generator's vibrations made the face ripple and shift, its features flowing like wax. The deep, resonant sound filled the chamber, but now it had structure, patterns, almost like It's trying to speak, Ben realized. The frequencies, they're forcing it to evolve faster than it planned, making it adapt. The face on the ceiling opened, all of them arranged in concentric rings, and from it came a sound that was almost words. Learn, become, join. The human forms along the walls began to move, reaching for them with arms that were just a little too long, fingers that bent in too many places. "The generator!" Jake shouted, limping toward the machine. "If the vibrations hurt it!" "Wait!" Ben grabbed his arm. "Look at the power readings. It's not hurting it, it's feeding it. All this time, it's been using the frequencies to speed up its evolution." The face on the ceiling smiled, a horrible expression that rippled across hundreds of mouths. More of the almost human forms began to rise from the floor, each one more perfect than the last. "Learn," the creature spoke again, its voice a combination of that deep, resonant tone and something approaching human speech. "Teach, become." "It wants to replace us," Marcus realized with horror. "It's been practicing, learning how to mimic humans perfectly, and once it does..." One of the forms reached them. This one was nearly flawless, only its eyes, with pupils that contracted in impossible patterns, gave it away. It opened its mouth to reveal rows of crystalline teeth arranged in perfect concentric circles. "Join us," it said in a voice that was almost human. Almost. Sarah grabbed Marcus's arm. "The fuel lines!" He followed her gaze to the thick pipes feeding the generator. Emergency shutoff valves lined the wall, and beside them, "The flare stack," he whispered. "If we rupture the lines..." Jake understood immediately. He pulled out his knife, the blade still coated in the creature's phosphorescent blood. "Those enzymes, they eat through everything." The creature's many faces smiled wider, its human forms moving closer. It thought it had them trapped. It thought it was winning. It didn't understand what desperate humans were capable of. Marcus met Sarah's eyes. She nodded once. "Now!" he shouted, and they launched into action, their last desperate plan taking shape as the creature's twisted evolution reached its peak around them. The chamber erupted into chaos. Jake hurled his enzyme-coated knife at the main fuel line, while Ben and Maya sprinted for the emergency shutoff valves. The creature's human forms lunged for them, their movements now terrifyingly natural, except for the impossible speed. "Cover your faces!" Marcus shouted as the knife struck. The metal pipe hissed and began to dissolve, releasing a spray of atomized fuel into the air. The generator's thrumming grew erratic. Sarah reached the flare stack controls, but one of the mimics caught her arm. Its face, a perfect copy of her own, smiled with crystalline teeth. "Join," it said in her voice. "Become." Amira swung a piece of broken machinery, shattering the mimic's head into liquid tissue that immediately began reforming. But those precious seconds were enough. Sarah slammed the flare stack ignition. Nothing happened. "The power!" Ben shouted, wrestling with a mimic that had his face, his voice. "It's controlling the electrical system." Above them, the massive face laughed, a sound like grinding stones mixed with human screams. More mimics rose from the floor, each one more perfect than the last. The fuel vapor continued to fill the air, but without a spark. Jake collapsed, his injured legs finally giving out. 3 mimics descended on him, their bodies melting together into a pool of living tissue that began to engulf him. "Do it!" he screamed, "while it's distracted!" Marcus looked at the generator, its massive form still pumping out the frequencies that were accelerating the creature's evolution. The fuel vapor was thick now, making their eyes burn. The creature's laughing face rippled above them, triumphant. "Maya!" he called. "Your camera!" She understood immediately, pulling out her battery-powered camera. But before she could act, a mimic that looked exactly like Marcus grabbed her throat with 2 long fingers. "Learn from you," it said in his voice. "Perfect you." The real Marcus tackled it, and they rolled across the floor, identical faces, identical movements. Maya couldn't tell them apart until one smiled with crystalline teeth. She hurled the camera into the generator's main housing, just as Amira pulled Jake free from the consuming tissue. Sarah and Ben fought back to back against a circle of mimics that wore their faces like masks. The camera struck metal, sparks flew. For a moment, nothing happened. The creature's laugh grew louder, its mimics pressing closer, its massive face stretching into an impossible smile. Then, the fuel vapor ignited. The explosion threw them all back, human and mimic alike.
Fire roared through the chamber, following the trails of vapor up the walls. The creature's laugh turned to a shriek that shattered stone. Its human forms began to melt, their perfect mimicry dissolving under the intense heat. The massive face on the ceiling writhed, its hundreds of eyes bulging as the flames reached it. "The shaft!" Marcus screamed over the inferno. "Now!" They ran for the maintenance shaft, dragging Jake between them. Behind them, the creature's true form began to emerge, its crystalline appendages smashing through the burning walls as it abandoned its human shapes. The generator exploded, sending shrapnel tearing through the chamber. One massive piece struck the creature's central mass, and its shriek rose to a pitch that made their ears bleed. They crawled through the shaft as fire chased them, the creature's dying screams shaking loose ancient stone. The tunnel began to collapse behind them, burying the burning chamber and the horrors within. They emerged into the main tunnel just as the final support beams gave way. The collapse chased them, a wave of destruction that sealed the creature in its burning tomb. Finally, they reached a junction where multiple tunnels met. The collapse stopped. The creature's screams faded to a distant rumble. They collapsed against the walls, gasping for breath, covered in burns and blood and things they didn't want to identify. Jake's legs were worse. The tissue damage from the digestive enzymes had spread. "We have to get him out," Sarah said, examining the wounds. "He needs medical attention." Marcus checked their remaining lights. Only 2 still worked. The batteries wouldn't last long. And somewhere in the darkness around them, something was moving. The creature's final shriek had changed at the end, become something else, almost like... "Listen," Maya whispered. In the distance, echoing through the tunnels, came the sound they had hoped never to hear again. That deep, resonant tone, but different now, angry, hungry, and closer than it should be. "It didn't die," Amira said, her voice hollow. "We just made it angry." Ben shone his light down each tunnel, the beam revealing only darkness. "Which way?" Before Marcus could answer, they heard it, the sound of crystalline appendages scraping against stone, but not from one tunnel, from all of them. "It's learned the mine layout," he realized. "It's not trying to mimic us anymore. Now it just wanted revenge." They huddled together in their small circle of light as the scraping sounds grew closer. Their last plan had failed. They were trapped, injured, and nearly helpless, and the creature was done playing games.
The scraping sounds converged from all directions, crystalline appendages dragging against stone with deliberate slowness. The creature had learned patience over its millennia of existence. Now it was savoring their fear. Marcus held Sarah's hand, feeling her trembling. Jake propped himself against the wall, his ruined legs barely supporting him. Maya clutched her empty camera bag like a shield. Ben and Amira stood back to back, their lights sweeping the darkness. "The collapse changed something," Amira whispered. "Listen to the resonance. It's different." She was right. The creature's deep bass note had acquired new harmonics, discordant frequencies that set their teeth on edge. The sound seemed to come from the stone itself, as if the entire mine had become an extension of the creature's body. "Look," Ben pointed his light at the tunnel floor. Crystalline growths were spreading like frost, transforming the rock into something else, something alive. The first appendage emerged from the darkness, but not the bone-white tentacle they'd seen before. This one was translucent, pulsing with internal light that cast twisted shadows on the walls. Evolution in action. "It's adapted to the fire," Marcus realized, "changed its biological structure." More appendages appeared, each one unique, as if the creature was experimenting with new forms. Some were segmented like centipedes, others rippled like liquid glass. All moved with terrible purpose. Jake laughed, a harsh, pained sound. "At least it's not trying to wear our faces anymore." The creature responded to his voice. The appendages paused their advance, and that resonant tone shifted again. The crystalline growths on the floor began to flow like mercury, gathering into a pool at the center of the junction. "Oh, God," Sarah breathed. "It's showing us." The liquid crystal rose, taking shape, but not a human shape this time. This was something older, something that had waited in the deep desert since before mammals walked the earth. Its true form.
The creature towered above them, its body a masterpiece of biological engineering. Layers of crystalline armor flowed like liquid silk, internal lights pulsing in complex patterns. Multiple appendages, each one different, each one perfect, extended from a central mass that constantly shifted and flowed. And at its core, revealed through transparent tissue, was something like a heart made of living crystal. It was beautiful. It was horrifying. It was evolution personified. The resonant tone changed one final time, and they all understood. It wasn't trying to mimic them anymore. It was showing them what they could become, what it could make them become. Join, it spoke, but not with Stola's human voices. This was its true voice, a symphony of frequencies that made the air itself vibrate. Evolve. No, Marcus said simply. The creature's internal lights pulsed faster. Anger? Confusion? Its appendages began to close in, but Marcus was smiling. Sarah saw it and understood immediately. One by one, the others noticed too. Even Jake managed a pained grin. "What's so funny?" the creature demanded in its harmonic voice. "You evolved, adapted, learned, but you forgot something fundamental about humans. We're really good at learning too," Sarah added. In one smooth motion, they all pulled out the crystalline shards they'd secretly gathered from the generator room. Shards coated in the creature's own digestive enzymes. Shards that were already beginning to dissolve. The creature's lights pulsed in alarm. Its appendages lunged forward. Too late. They hurled the dissolving crystals directly at the creature's exposed heart. The shards struck home, their decaying structure releasing concentrated enzymes directly into the creature's pore. The effect was instantaneous. The creature's perfect form began to break down, its evolved structures turning against it. The digestive enzymes, originally designed to break down human tissue, had evolved along with the rest of its biology. Now they were perfectly adapted to dissolve crystalline flesh. The creature's scream shook the mine. Its appendages thrashed wildly, smashing support beams. The ceiling began to collapse. "Run!" Marcus shouted, though they hardly needed the command. They fled through the only tunnel not blocked by thrashing crystalline limbs, Jake supported between Ben and Amira. Behind them, the creature's death throes brought down tons of rock and earth. They ran until their legs gave out, until the sounds of destruction faded to distant rumbles, until the last of their lights flickered and died. Then, in the perfect darkness, Sarah felt something on her face. "Air!" she gasped. "Fresh air!" They followed the breeze to find a shaft of sunlight cutting through the gloom. An old ventilation tunnel, partially collapsed, led to the surface. One by one, they climbed out into the harsh desert sun. The ground still trembled with distant collapse, but the creature's resonant tone had faded to nothing. They stood together, watching as a massive sinkhole formed in the desert floor, swallowing the mine and everything in it. Everything evolved, everything adapted, everything dead. Maya touched her throat where the mimic had grabbed her. Do you think it was the last one?" Marcus looked out across the endless desert, remembering the ancient bones they'd found, the countless tunnels that must honeycomb the deep places of the earth. "No," he said quietly, "but maybe it was the last one that will ever try to become human." The sinkhole finished its collapse, leaving nothing but a depression in the sand. The wind began to blow, already starting to fill it in. In a few years, there would be no trace anything had ever happened here. They began their long walk back to civilization, leaving behind a grave 60 million years in the making. The desert wind carried away the last echoes of inhuman harmonics, and somewhere in the deep places of the earth, ancient things dreamed of evolution. The end.